But yes, I'm here to talk to you about kind of my journey and my experience on clusters, communities, and co-working spaces. I will just share my screen with you now. Hello, I am Jess. This is me at the age of about 5 or 6. I don't quite know the age. But yeah, I'm here today to talk to you about communities, clusters, and co-working spaces and how that's kind of impacted my career. I was born with a disability called cerebral palsy, and I don't know how many people know about CP, but it's a result from a lack of oxygen at birth, kind of to the brain. But yeah, this is me at about 5 or 6, but it hasn't, because I've lived with CP. I kind of only can really experience, like, know what it's like to live with disability, not kind of live as opposed to living non-disabled. I studied a BA in product and furniture design at Kingston University, and shortly after I graduated, I kind of knew that I wanted to forge my own career. I focused kind of my best way, so after leaving, I kind of focused on how best I could set up a business. And so I kind of joined with lots of different charities and organizations, and I found a kind of 12-week business bootcamp course, which I signed up to. And basically the course started, kind of, you were able to, there was about 25 people and kind of cash funding prize at the end of the course to basically kickstart your company. But yeah, I kind of launched into it, not really thinking that I would win or I'd be able to get secure funding. And later, lo and behold, I win my first kind of cash funding prize. And that's where it all kind of begins, really, for me. I started kind of when I finished university. I didn't want to launch straight into kind of finding a job. So I started working freelance on kind of a number of projects, this one included, just to kind of enable myself to suss out the kind of sort of area that I wanted to work in. I knew that I wanted to specialize and work with young people who identified as disabled, working and creating in the creative sectors. And so I connected with charities and companies like A New Direction, just to kind of get my foot in the door, really. A New Direction, just to give you a bit of background on who they are, they have a growing network of creative champions which work with deaf, disabled, and neurodiverse young people from across London. Their SEND network is a free professional development programme for London special schools, teachers, and mainstream Senkos. I actually started working with them as part of they were holding a Creativity Works kind of design course, which was like another kind of full throttle, just in a very short amount of time, learning how to get your foot in the door, basically, to work with design agencies. So I joined them to kind of gain further opportunities for myself. I was then able to get some freelance work with them later on, that where I was able to kind of work more one-on-one with children and young people with SEND, so special educational needs and disabilities. And so I blogged and reported on a number of projects with them, and the specific ones that I've got, I'll show you a photo of, just kind of seemed to stick with me, really. I find that freelancing with the Special Schools Network at the Tate Exchange as part of the A&D Inclusive event was a real kind of incredible insight just into understanding, capturing and learning the strengths and weaknesses, people with different abilities face on a daily basis. What I loved about here is that there was kind of like a community that existed that I didn't know personally. know it existed until I kind of wedged my foot in the door. And so the community is like a kind of, there was a really kind of lovely way of a kind of cluster development that got going kind of through all these schools, SEND schools, that knew each other, working in these great big kind of orgs like the Tate Exchange. I find that storytelling is a really powerful tool, which we can use in any medium. But for me, when I write, I can kind of, I feel like sitting down with a child, I feel a bit more free and direct in how I share information, whether that's kind of sitting with a child who's nonverbal and learning how to kind of understand how they communicate through touch, emotion, or sound, or if it's a child sitting in front of me that I have to kind of look at and respond to physically with a 3D object. What was so great about this opportunity is that it created space for me to learn and just to observe, how children with SEND adapt and learn within these different environments and challenges that kind of they face as well. I personally like to focus more on one-on-one work. So for me, I feel like I gained the kind of privilege, an insight, even if it was just for a short, couple of days into the lives of these children, which was very, very special for me. I find that the creative world is very unique in that sense. Kind of, it takes a very simple approach, like kind of, allowing a building space and having, all these kids just occupy the space for a week, and they can kind of run riot and do what they want to do, obviously, and kind of in the parameters of not kind of injuring oneself. But yeah, I feel like it's very unique in that sense. Kind of, it takes a very simple approach and applies it to kind of everyday activities. I was recently invited to be part of the Creative Industries Federation cohort. This is a federation that look to kind of creating change across the creative sectors, just to give better support to freelancers. I'm a freelancer myself, and they help kind of support freelancers to ensure a more equal, there's more that there's more of an equal relationship between freelancers, brands, and institutions, and how they kind of work together. What was so lovely is that when they approached me, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited, thank you so much for thinking of me. And I was really interested to find out more, because it's a group made up of 15 individuals, all from very, very, very different backgrounds. And you might, some faces might be familiar to you here. But we have a collective aim, which is that over the months, we've been working to try and kind of change policy within the creative sectors, just to kind of make it a bit more inclusive. So I guess you could say that the work that we've been doing here, there's a sort of cluster that's been formed out of the 12, 15 of us. We all kind of bring very different strengths, but as a collective, we're aiming to make the creative sector, the creative freelance sector, more inclusive. Around a similar sort of time to when I was approached by Creative Federation, I was also invited to work with Stage Text. If you don't know who they are, they're a deaf-led charity working to make culture more accessible to everyone. Working with Stage Text and the Federation, I don't think would have come up for me if I hadn't been at the right place at the right time. And for this, I'm incredibly grateful for. I think when working within the creative sector, yes, it's about knowing who's who, but it's also about how you can further take those opportunities yourself, to kind of create new pathways and new collaborations for you, or for yourself in the future, that can then lead to kind of external jobs. Earlier this year, I actually carried out some work as a teaching assistant to a very cute reception class, and kind of the kids were about 4 or 5 years old, just because I wanted to broaden my learnings and kind of work out what it was like to work with children, specifically in an education setting with SEN in schools. It kind of took me back to my old school days, because when I was younger in school, kind of primary, secondary, I was in a mainstream school. I started in a mainstream school, and then it wasn't until the years like 6 I transferred into a SEN school. So a school that kind of worked more closely with people who were dyslexic and dyspraxic. So in this school, I was actually assisting a child who had quite severe autism in a mainstream environment. And I quickly realised, what the kind of challenges that are actually faced, the challenges that teachers and Senkos face very early on in education. At that age, you don't really realise how valuable having that one-to-one support can be until you leave the education system to like university. So for me, it was a parallel experience, kind of putting things into context and perspective, which has also been a really important step kind of in my developmental career, kind of not growing up as a disabled child. My parents didn't treat me any differently. They were just kind of like, okay, here you go, throw you in at the deep end and see how far you can go. So yeah, kind of making that switch from mainstream to SEN is a very different kind of shocking switch in a good way. So for me, having those two different perspectives on education, I feel has enabled me to do the work that I can do now. I feel like, I've actually just staying here, I feel like there needs to be, I feel like inclusion and disability studies need to be taught as part of mainstream education within the curriculum, because I feel like there's always a disconnect that happens between when a child or young person leaves the education system and then goes into kind of employment. There's always, I feel like there's not enough teachings that happen early on in education about SEN, SEND children. So I think there needs to be a bit of a remodeling and restructuring. And I mean, I'm still, learning what those areas could look like. This is my kind of first little teaching job that I had. I'm very grateful that a lot of my work has been kind of picked up, you could say, by media outlets. When you work in the creative sectors, you feel a sense of community, because everyone's always you find that everyone's working in quite a similar area to you, which means that you can develop quite a wide range of kind of coverage in the media. I've been very fortunate that my work has been picked up by companies like Creative Life in Progress, and it's nice that, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart, because without these articles and features, I don't think I would be kind of where I am today in my kind of journey or career. Just to kind of give you a bit of a snapshot, really, a bit about this slide of the work that I started doing, kind of how I got into what I do. I launched a pop-up shop in Peckham, which was a community-led project I created out of my first funding block, where I invited designers and creatives to collaborate on projects. From there, I then received further funding, where I was able to design some hackathons which I'll show you later on. And whilst I was here, I was kind of picked up by lots of different press. So it's just kind of making the conversation, around how important and how crucial and grateful, I am, and it is to kind of have, have all these events that you hold, but also the kind of ripple effect that they can make for you. So just to kind of give you an idea from this pop-up shop and the work that I was doing just as I'd left university, I was able to give lots of kind of talks. So I was invited to talks by the Design Museum, done some small projects as well with their Design Ventura kind of cohort. I had a lovely, the Dots and Squarespace announced me as one of their creative leaders with a social heart. I was in the Creative Lives in Progress. And this is one of the first articles that I was published in the big issue. I do have a little video, if there's time at the end to show, but this was
Yeah, go for it, Jessica, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if it can work. You might have to bear with me.
It worked in practice, which is always, tempting fate.
Yes, let me know if you can hear this. Okay. I'll stop it there because you kind of get the gist of the end of that video. But yes, that was kind of that was a project. Big screen. So that was a project that we did as part of a. We're kind of doing some work. I was doing some work with a New Direction on a different project. And we did this at the Machines Room in East London. But yeah, just kind of to give you a bit of talking about kind of the co-working elements that I've done with my design hackathons that I was talking to you about before. This is a kind of space that I was working at. I was working at a space called Soapbox Islington. We were invited to, or we were kind of allowed to use their 3D workshop, and they had like a kind of everything. It was like a co-working space where I was teaching young adults from main cap, little product design workshops. And these are some of the outcomes that were made, just to kind of give you a bit of an idea. But yeah, thank you. That's me.
That was great, Jessica. My mum's in a wheelchair, and I love the fact they went through all the different versions of it, and because you can over design something, and sometimes it was a really simple idea, but it's just test and try.
Exactly. And I think there was lots of different, I mean, that was probably out of like 100 products that we tested. So yes, it's very, it's a trial and error.